Today we're going to talk about America's greatest fictional military force, an iconic action figure that has a rich history spanning decades and has left a lasting mark on popular culture. Any guesses? Yes, we're talking about G.I. Joe. From its inception as a military-themed action figure in the 1960s to its transformation into a multimedia franchise. In this article, we will explore the fascinating journey of G.I. Joe, tracing its roots, exploring its evolution, and looking into its current state in the entertainment landscape. Let's get straight into it. Not so surprisingly, the story of G.I. Joe actually started with Barbie. Yes, by the early 1960s, Barbie had become one of the biggest toy creations in history. The sales for the Barbie dolls were skyrocketing and turned Mattel into the second largest toy manufacturer in the world. This caught the attention of toy creator and licensing agent Stan Weston, who wanted to hop on the trend and cash in on its success. So Weston created prototype dolls based on the US Armed Forces and brought them to a Hasbro executive named Donald Levine. If you're not familiar with Hasbro, it's a gigantic toy company that is responsible for G.I. Joe, Transformers, and other iconic toy lines. It's said that after looking at Weston's designs, Levine told him he could make a fortune with these. Eventually, Weston licensed the entire concept to Hasbro for $100,000, not realizing just how popular the toy line would become. It was definitely a deal that Weston would grow to regret. In 1964, Hasbro introduced G.I. Joe as an action figure representing the real American hero and drawing inspiration from the military during a time when the United States was heavily involved in the Vietnam War. The original G.I. Joe was a 12-inch articulated figure representing various branches of the military, such as the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. Hasbro made a conscious choice not to call it a doll, because boys wouldn't play with dolls, right? Instead, they chose to use the term action figure as a gender-neutral alternative. As it turns out, this was a brilliant marketing move. G.I. Joe appealed to a wide audience of both boys and girls, giving birth to a new era of action-oriented toys and imaginative playing for kids. Although G.I. Joe experienced a good amount of success in the 1960s and 1970s, it wasn't until the 1980s that the franchise truly skyrocketed in popularity. To capitalize on the rapidly growing interest in toys tied to shows and movies, Hasbro reimagined G.I. Joe as a team of elite soldiers fighting the evil terrorist organization called Cobra. In 1982, Hasbro introduced a new 3.75-inch line of G.I. Joe action figures, along with an animated series produced by Sunbow Entertainment and a Marvel comic book series. The smaller, more affordable figures allowed children to collect all their favorite G.I. Joe characters, along with accessories like their clothes and vehicles, making their make-believe world of soldiers even more exciting and building a dedicated fan base. The animated series G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero became a massive hit in the 80s and contributed to the franchise's popularity in a big way. The show was known for its gripping storylines, intense action sequences, and memorable characters, each of whom had unique personalities and backstories. This was the time when G.I. Joe became more than just a toy. It became a pop culture phenomenon. Another thing that Hasbro did, which was unique to G.I. Joe, was that unlike most toy lines, it incorporated characters from other areas of pop culture in the world of G.I. Joes. This was a smart strategy, as it allowed audiences from other areas of entertainment to be introduced to the G.I. Joe franchise. For example, they incorporated the popular WWF character Sergeant Slaughter in their line of toys, comics, and cartoons. As the 1980s turned into the 1990s, the popularity of G.I. Joe continued to thrive. The landscape of entertainment and toys was evolving. To keep the franchise fresh and appealing for new generations, Hasbro made several adaptations. In 1991, Hasbro launched the G.I. Joe Hall of Fame series, which featured larger, more detailed action figures. These figures were aimed at an older collector market while still retaining the core elements that made G.I. Joe a beloved brand. The 2000s saw G.I. Joe undergo yet another transformation. In 2003, Hasbro launched G.I. Joe vs. Cobra, which returned back to the original 3.75-inch figures and reintroduced the conflict between G.I. Joe and the terrorist organization, Cobra. This reboot resonated with fans of the 1980s series and captured a new generation of young enthusiasts. There was also another factor that kept the G.I. Joe franchise thriving during the 2000s: nostalgia. As time went on, kids who grew up with the G.I. Joe toys and cartoons became adults who started buying older classic G.I. Joe figures for exorbitant prices. In 2009, G.I. Joe made a significant leap back into the mainstream with the release of the live-action film G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, directed by Stephen Sommers and starring Channing Tatum. The movie brought the adored action figures to life on the big screen. Despite mixed reviews from critics, the film performed well at the box office and helped bring back interest in the G.I. Joe franchise. The success of The Rise of Cobra led to a sequel, G.I. Joe: Retaliation, in 2013, further solidifying G.I. Joe's place in modern pop culture. However, the live-action films took creative liberties and sort of changed the original storylines, leading to criticisms from some longtime fans. In recent years, G.I. Joe has experienced a revival through the G.I. Joe Classified series. It was launched by Hasbro in 2021, and this new line of highly articulated 6-inch action figures targeted the adult collector's market while still appealing to longtime fans. The Classified series brought a fresh wave of excitement to the franchise, with its iconic characters and enhanced details that resonated with both collectors and G.I. Joe enthusiasts. G.I. Joe also continues to be a staple in the world of comic books. Several publishers have released new G.I. Joe comic books that explore different aspects of the franchise's mythology and bring fresh perspectives to the classic characters. But even today, the enduring legacy of G.I. Joe can be largely attributed to the power of nostalgia and its ability to connect with those who had grown up with the franchise during its prime. As children who had played with G.I. Joe action figures in the 1980s and 90s became adults, they carried fond memories of their favorite characters, and these memories became an integral part of their childhood. G.I. Joe definitely holds a special place in the hearts of many 80s and 90s kids. It is nostalgia that led people to seek out collectibles, vintage action figures, and other G.I. Joe-related souvenirs. The surge in demand for retro G.I. Joe items not only showcased the lasting impact G.I. Joe had on its audience, but also served as the fuel the franchise needed when things had gotten a little slow for them. As G.I. Joe navigates the ever-shifting landscape of the industry it's in, its legacy is surely a testament to the power of its iconic characters, its great storytelling, and the sweet connection between its beloved toys and its very dedicated fan base. We also want to hear from you. Have you ever owned a G.I. Joe action figure? And who is your favorite character from the franchise? Comment below and let us know. Also, comment and tell us about which company or brand you want us to talk about, and maybe we'll make a video on that next. That's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. And please, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting content on some of your favorite companies. We'll see you in the next video.